The story behind League of Legends, Episode 20. SHYVANA, the Half-Dragon. The interminable mysteries of dragons confound and elude all theories. Those who study the subject speak of ancient, elemental runes split between dragon bloodlines, fractions passing from female dragons into their firstborn daughters. These shards instill the dragon that bears it with potent magic of wind, earth, water, or fire. One such dragon egg nested deep within an equatorial volcano, pulsed with the faint echoes of a fire rune. Drawn by its power, a daring mage attempted to extract its runic magics, only to be interrupted by the dragon mother's return. The mage fled, having unknowingly infused the egg with his own mortal magic in the chaos. The dragon mother, Eva, marveled at the fiery energy swirling beneath the shell, oblivious to the alloyed magic within. She and her mate planned to name their progeny SHYVANA to honor Eva's legacy. The blood moon of autumn gave way to winter and the egg finally hatched, revealing a human infant with violet skin. As the child took her first breath and began to cry, her body shook and rippled, taking the form of a dragon. Eva recoiled at the hybrid abomination and sought to kill her child. She would not allow such an unnatural thing to pollute her bloodline. But her mate could not allow SHYVANA's murder, and after a ferocious battle, SHYVANA's father fled with the newborn in tow. For years, SHYVANA and her father flew from place to escape Eva's vengeance. As SHYVANA grew, she struggled to control her tempestuous emotions and volatile power. Her father helped temper her dragon side, which unleashed a ruthless fury she had inherited from her mother. While in her humanoid form, SHYVANA suffered numerous self-inflicted burns as she learned that life could be fragile and not everything could be set aflame without consequence. Occasionally, her dragon fire activated a runic echo within her, an echo that was intrinsically linked to her mother. As SHYVANA's power grew in strength, Eva was able to sense her daughter's presence from afar. She found the child alone and taunted SHYVANA with tales of her origin, revealing that her true father was a feeble human who had twisted her noble draconic lineage into a disgusting perversion. Her mother would undo what should never have been brought to life, and attacked. Young SHYVANA defended herself, but suffered many wounds before her father arrived to save her. He fought with savage fury to give SHYVANA time to escape, showing no mercy or restraint to his former mate. Ultimately, he succumbed to the heat of Eva's dragon fire and was slain. As SHYVANA grieved, she fled in search of a strange land her father had told stories of, a place awash with petricite, stones of nullifying power that diminished any nearby magic. When she reached the outer territories of Demacia, she knew she had discovered what she sought. The land itself felt heavy and oppressive, making it difficult to wield her runic powers, and SHYVANA found it easier to remain in human form. Here, she hoped she could mask her magic enough to hide from her mother. While hunting for fresh meat, SHYVANA followed the scent of blood and came upon an injured warrior named GAREN near death in the wilds. Though her predatory instincts told her to finish him, her human side recognized that he needed her help. No one was likely to find him in the remote hills of Greater Demacia, and he would die without aid. SHYVANA carried the semi-conscious GAREN to the nearest town, despite her fear that she'd be met with the same disdain she'd encountered all her life. To her surprise, the locals welcomed her to their town and thanked her for helping the soldier. She saw how the villagers pulled together to nurse GAREN back to health, even though he was a stranger, and SHYVANA observed something she'd never known: camaraderie. Demacians looked out for each other, she learned, and the more she saw of the community, the more she longed to be part of it. For months, SHYVANA lived in peace, hunting wild boars and white elk by day, and returning to the village with her spoils to share by night. She learned that GAREN had been a prisoner of a neighboring realm and escaped his captors, but felt unworthy of returning to his life in the capital. One evening, SHYVANA heard the sound of leathery wings beating in the distance, and knew her mother had come for her once more. The great dragon ravaged the land in search of SHYVANA, burning towns and fields with her flaming breath. GAREN led the panicked villagers to Castle Renwall, a high-walled stronghold where they could shelter behind its stone walls. Knowing her presence would only harm those she had come to care for, SHYVANA decided to return to the wilderness. Jarvan confronted her as she prepared to leave, and she ruefully admitted that she was a half-drake, and the root of her dragon mother's furious wrath. Jarvan refused to let her leave. She had saved his life, so he would lay down his to defend hers. Jarvan proposed they fight Eva together. With the support of the local villagers and Renwall soldiers, he was convinced they could defeat the monster. Moved by his concern for her safety, SHYVANA accepted his offer. After Jarvan had trained the townsfolk to fight alongside the soldiers of Renwall, SHYVANA entered a nearby ruin built from ancient petricite, shivering as the nullifying stones suppressed her powers. The soldiers and villagers hid themselves nearby as piercing horns grew from SHYVANA's forehead and she erupted into a scarlet-winged drake. She roared, shooting plumes of fire into the sky to lure her mother to the ground. SHYVANA heard the telltale beating of ancient wings as Eva approached. Upon her mother's arrival, soldiers loosed volleys of arrows tipped with petricite to weaken her. The great dragon retaliated with tearing claws and roaring torrents of flame that roasted scores of soldiers in their armor. At Jarvan's command, the villagers continued their barrage of attacks as yet more nullifying arrows pierced the dragon mother's flesh, anchoring her to the ruins below. SHYVANA stood before her mother in proud defiance, but Eva only laughed. She had always underestimated her daughter's wrath. Tooth and claw tore flesh from bone as the two dragons clashed in a titanic battle, crushing the foundations of the ruins to dust. SHYVANA ripped Eva's wing from her back, but her mother locked SHYVANA's neck between her razor-sharp jaws. Blood streamed from SHYVANA's collarbone, and she collapsed into her human form. As Eva loomed over her daughter, ready to end the life she had begun, SHYVANA channeled all her grief and fury, and summoned the power of the fire rune within her blood. She dug her claws into her mother's flesh and tore the living heart from her chest. As Eva's lifeblood drained, SHYVANA felt no mercy, and roared in triumph. Before the entire village, Jarvan honored SHYVANA's bravery, declaring that she would always have a home in Demacia. For the first time, SHYVANA knew she belonged to something greater than herself, and, thanks to Jarvan, understood that Demacia's strength was its unity of purpose. She was humbled, and in turn swore her service to Jarvan, offering to fight alongside him no matter his path. With the great dragon destroyed, Jarvan's faith in his ability to lead was restored, and he felt he could return to his home city. SHYVANA returned to the capital with him, and they bore her mother's skull as a reminder of their incredible triumph. SHYVANA knew Demacia could be dangerous for someone as magical as her, but she had never felt a greater sense of belonging. In the capital, SHYVANA remains in her purple-skinned humanoid form as she defends her adoptive home, though every so often, she escapes into the wild to spread her wings. She proudly serves Demacia, but knows that someday she must answer the runic call that burns within her heart. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share video and subscribe us channel.